13 years ago, my family and I decided to try something that no one we knew had ever done. We decided to leave our lovely little mid-century rental home in the city to move to 4 acres of lease-to-own land in the country. We were going to live in a yurt. It was our solution to the fact that we couldn't afford both rent and student loan payments, only rent or student loan payments. Now, if you don't know what a yurt is, raise your hand. Anyone here who doesn't know what a yurt is? Okay, just a couple of people, I'll tell you. Imagine a normal, what we call a stick-built house, a normal house, sometimes wood, sometimes brick, and then imagine a tent, and imagine them having a baby. And it's a round baby, okay? That's what a yurt is. We had no building skills and almost no money, so I'm honestly not quite sure why we thought it was a good idea. We lived for a while in an old 1987 camper for about a year and a half on the land while we were trying to save money for the yurt. Oh, did I mention? We had a 12-year-old and a 5-year-old at the time. Seriously, what were we thinking? Now, I'll be honest. There were times in that year and a half, along with the year or so of living in the yurt before we got all the systems operational, when we thought we had screwed up in every possible way. We had no real skills. We had no savings that could be easily retrieved. In my haste to be independent and rent-free, I had thought that things like the fact that we homeschooled and that I did things like canning salsa and making my own cloth diapers and making my own yogurt somehow meant I could build a yurt and sculpt land into something livable. Y'all, I was clueless. During those months in the camper, just those, let's not even talk about the time when we had to get the yurt going, just in the camper, we experienced 100-year snowfall, flooding, the deaths of 2 beloved 18-year-old cats, the air conditioner in the camper going out, increasingly complex elder care responsibilities with my in-laws, a wasp invasion, not to mention the sheer terror of a family of 4 getting ready in a tiny, tiny camper bathroom. We would save money, then the car would break down or the refrigerator would go out and the money would be gone again. Meanwhile, we still didn't know jack about building a deck for the yurt, much less putting up the darn thing. We began to fear that we were going to have to admit that we'd made a mistake and we had to go back to city living. We didn't want to give in, but our spirits were bruised and battered, and we felt out of control. On one spectacularly bad day, I was sitting on a hill on our land, looking down at the camper. I think that day there were mudslides and the air conditioner was out. It was awful. And I just began to cry. And I'm talking about the big, ugly, snotty kind of cry. I know you know the kind of cry I'm talking about. I honestly wasn't sure I had the courage to keep going. Now, back then, during the early years when we lived in the camper and the yurt, my grandmother was still alive and lived just a couple of towns over. I visited her not long after my big cry on the hill, and I told her everything. How difficult things were, how I feared we just weren't as tough and capable as she and my grandfather had been. She laughed at me when I said that last part, which was definitely not the compassionate response I expected. "Do you think it wasn't hard for us?" she asked me. "Do you think we didn't have times when we thought we'd screwed up? We had plenty of days when it felt like we couldn't go on." I immediately felt so silly, so ridiculous, that I assumed that because by the time I saw them, their lives looked like they had everything figured out. But of course things had been hard for them. When they were younger, they had built their own house from the ground up. They had started with nothing, just like we had. They had 4 children. I only had 2. My grandfather had worked the graveyard shift at night. Does everyone here call it that, or was that just an Arkansas thing? The night shift? Okay, graveyard. He worked it at night, and he farmed all during the day. I'm not sure when he slept. My grandmother took care of her own home and children, plus the home and children of a local doctor, 5 days a week. Grandpa farmed and gardened, also keeping cows and chickens, and Grandma canned most of the food they ate all year. And they never had much money, just enough to get by. Of course, my grandma had big, ugly, snotty cries while sitting on her land. Of course, they occasionally felt like screw-ups. Of course, they felt overwhelmed. I am here because, for the most part, my ancestors survived their own hard times. You are here because generations before you survived. We are the children and the grandchildren and the great-grandchildren of many, many people before us who all got through their own days of the big, ugly cry. I think of all of my ancestors, but probably most often I think of my women ancestors, my queer ancestors, my trans and non-binary and neurodivergent and disabled ancestors, because their bodies were less safe and less their own. I'm sure you have your specific ancestors that you think of as well. How did they survive what the world threw at them? How did they thrive even, which they sometimes did? How did they keep themselves and their babies healthy? How did they find joy? And what would they think about us now with our vaccines and our birth control and our marriage equality and our pants? What would they be so proud of us for? And then my next question, of course, is what would they be disappointed to see that we still have to fight or that we still haven't fixed? In the prologue of Anita Diamant's book, The Red Tent, it opens with an imagined conversation between a woman from biblical times, Dinah, who was the daughter of Leah and Jacob. And probably that book is mostly read by women. Not all, but mostly. And so the prologue directly addresses these current day women readers. And the opening line says, "We have been lost to each other for so long, and now you come to me, women with hands and feet as soft as a queen's, with more cooking pots that you need, so safe in childbed and so free with your tongues. You come hungry for the story that was lost. You crave words to fill the great silence that swallowed me, my mothers, and my grandmother before them." I often feel that silence, that great gulf of time and distance and years, a silence between me and my ancestors, beyond my parents who are still living and the grandparents that I can still remember, though they are gone. I crave their presence. I crave knowledge of them that feels lost to me. Is there a way for us to be in conversation with them, even those from many, many generations ago? Is there wisdom that we can take from them, a message from their survival? I think the first message is the one that I received loud and clear from my laughing grandmother when she made fun of me for assuming she had no real troubles. The truth is, every generation has a gauntlet of their own that they have to struggle through. Every life that's ever been lived has had days filled with big, ugly cries. Everyone has, at some time, felt like they just couldn't go on. And then the next lesson from our ancestors might be something that our world of today needs more than ever. With our social media and our instant news and AI popping up everywhere we go and fascism rising and all of the things, there's so much on our plates right now. I wonder if there's peace to be gained by returning to some of the work and pursuits of past generations. Is there perhaps more joy in knitting than scrolling? Would gardening help us thrive more than spiraling with the news that comes at us every hour? Would a return to simple living help us simply make it through this particular gauntlet that we are in? In many ways, my family's first year on the land when we lived in the camper was a kind of going back to a simpler time. I don't know that we necessarily intended that, but that's kind of what happened. We experienced life much closer to what past generations have gone through. Yes, there were hard times with ugly cries, but there were also so many good times, so many gifts. We took nature into us and we gave ourselves to it, living outside as much as we did inside. We saw the moon and the stars in a different way that year, becoming familiar with them, making friends with them. We had campfires. We sang at the top of our lungs at midnight because we have 4 acres and we could. We learned about living in a way that year that we had never done before. I call it living on the edge of living. There are only a few things we humans need, it turns out. Someplace dry, not too hot, not too cold, protection from the weather, a softish place to sleep, enough food to eat, and clean, readily available water, community or family, and loving connections to other beings, access to medical care, the same thing our ancestors needed, and the same things that many people in the world today still don't have, the same things that our ancestors have had to work or even fight for. That first year on our land, this was our gift. This learning was our gift. We appreciated, for the first time, things that our grandparents and great-grandparents knew. We learned how amazing running water is and how air conditioners are a marvel and a gift. We literally had a party while standing around a flushing toilet. I am not kidding. We clapped for the first flush. We learned how fun and sometimes hard it is to live so close to the people you love the most. We started doing things like board games and telling stories and singing together because they were all we had to do. The seasons and the weather, they become much more important in that kind of living because they were felt much more keenly. I never felt closer to my ancestors than I did in those early days on the land. Now look, I personally, I'm a girl of creature comforts now. I do not want to go back to the making do hustle of that year with all its challenges. And I certainly don't think that we all have to go build log cabins or get a dairy cow to connect with the past. But maybe some of their simple pursuits could help us survive our hard times. Maybe some of what got them through could also get us through. It honestly might be just what we need right now to counteract the pace and overwhelm of life in 2025. Okay. Now it's time for the accountability portion of our ancestor discussion, because not everyone in the past was a sweet grandma or a kindly farmer. There were, of course, the wide-scale systemic harms that some of our ancestors participated in. And on an individual level, we all have that terrible great Uncle Paul or that mean great Grandma Sue. I don't want to idolize or romanticize our ancestors. I think it's important to have a clear-eyed view of them and the realities of their lives. Some of our ancestors participated in and perpetuated systems of incredible harm. Some of our ancestors were themselves victims of those systems of harm. Humans have done terrible things in every generation, including now. Humans have borne unbelievable hardship and trauma in every generation. So connecting with our ancestors can be complicated at best. And some of them I don't want to connect with at all. But I think it's important to remember only when we know our history can we create the future we want. How can we hold all of that while we are working to commune with our ancestors? The poet Rumi wrote that love is the bridge between you and everything. And I submit that this is true even beyond this time, even beyond the living and the long gone. Because love as a container can hold both respect and accountability for the beloved. We do that with those who we love, who are still with us, don't we? We give them respect, we hold them accountable. It's both. We can do that with our ancestors as well. Love is wide enough to hold all of that. I like to think about what they would think about us today. I actually have an ancestor. We found this. Thank you, Ancestry.com. We found that I have an ancestor who wrote a letter in support of a woman who was being accused of witchery in the Salem witch trials. I like to think that her spirit would look down on me and my work with love and pride. I like to think of my queer ancestors seeing me live my true self, seeing my wife live her true, gorgeous trans self. I think they would be so joyful. I think they would be so, so proud of us and what we have accomplished. I like to think of my farmer ancestors laughing with loving indulgence over my mostly failed efforts at gardening. I also have a slew of preacher ancestors. I come from a long line of them. And though our theology was very different, I kind of like to think that they show up anytime I'm in the pulpit. Dr. Maya Angelou had a graduation speech where she was saying that anytime she had to go into a new room where she felt maybe a little trepidation or a little fear, she would invite her team to come with her team of ancestors. Google this video sometime this week if you want. It is really worth seeing. And Dr. Angelou, she says, come on, come with me now. I need you. Come on, Auntie. I need you now. Come on, Grandpa. I know you're tired. Come with me now. I need you. Bringing those long-lost loved ones with us. We are here because they survived. We are the children and the grandchildren and the great-grandchildren and before of many, many people who got through their own days of big, ugly cries. We can bring them with us to get through moments of overwhelm and fear and sadness. And we can remember that perhaps the ways that they got through are what can get us through. They survived. They sometimes even thrived. And so can we. We can rage knit like our grandmothers did. We can meditate as we plant greens and radishes and potatoes, ripping up the weeds of fascism as we do. We can play board games and sing and swap stories instead of spiraling with everything that comes at us 24/7. In small ways like this, we can connect with them. On your own personal big ugly cry days, try inviting the ancestors into the room. Bring them with you to accompany you. Maybe there's one or two in particular you'd like to invite. I take my Salem witch trial woman with me about everywhere I go. We're going to sing a song in just a little bit with Violet that has the lyrics, "You do not carry this alone." When we bring our ancestors along, we are not truly ever alone, even when we physically are in the present moment. we can say, come on, Grandma, I need you. Come with me, Auntie, I need you now. They were by no means perfect. We have to hold the both and in our hands, venerating them and holding them accountable. But we are who we are because of who they were. And we too will be the ancestors of tomorrow. Our future will be shaped by us just like we were shaped by them. Love is the bridge between us and everything, our past and our future. It is a container to hold the complicated reality of all that we are, all that we were, and all that we hope to be. Amen, and blessed be.